Brian, I'm not even going to try to attempt to say your last name. How do you say your last name?
Well, that's a story for a different day. So Njuguna is my middle name.
That's the one.
That's my name. So
Okay.
my last name is actually Ngugi, which is my dad's name.
Okay.
So culturally, your boys are named after your dad. Actually, the kids are named after the dad. So my full
always?
name
do you just have generations of kids with the same name?
So my mom, my dad's side, there's a few kids. There's about 18, 21 kids on my dad's side, so 2 wives. And
Hold on, stop. Your dad has 21 kids?
No, 21 brothers.
Okay.
20 brothers and sisters.
Okay.
And generationally, each firstborn male is called Joyfree Wambogo Ngoge.
Wow.
Joyfree Wambogo, so that's a name. So all firstborn males in my family, so from my dad's side, all firstborn males are Joyfree Wambogo.
Okay.
So, and the short is Jeff.
So you changed it when you come to Australia?
No, it's because I'm the last born.
Okay.
But so my brother is Joyfree Wambogo Jeff. So each family that has a firstborn male, they have a Jeff.
Okay.
But because I'm the last born, so my last name, Ngugi, is my dad's name. So when people ask me what are your names, I usually just say Brian Njuguna. So what are your full names? Brian Njuguna Ngugi.
So was Brian given to you at birth, or was
Yeah, so Kenya, English colony.
Yep.
So most, if not all, have an English first name.
So my dad is an immigrant from Germany.
Yeah.
His name was, it's spelled U-W-E, but it's pronounced Ulver.
Okay.
And he just changed it. It was like, because everyone calls him Yui, and he didn't like that nobody could say it, so he just changed it to Don.
See, because everyone asks me about Brian, with my kids, I didn't give them English names. So my kids, my wife is Lebanese, so my kids are half Kenyan, half Lebanese. She's half Syrian.
Yeah.
So my firstborn son, his name is Sharbel.
Okay.
And then his middle name is Nganga.
Okay.
His last name is my name, which is Njuguna.
Yeah.
Then the second born is Raphael, which is his name, which is the Lebanese equivalent of the Lebanese name. Then Kemathi, which is a Kenyan name. And then his last name, Njuguna. And the last born is Mikhail Ngare Njuguna. And
See, my wife's family like that. My wife's Croatian, and her family's like that. We're not. Like, we just called our kids Australian names. But, like, all her cousins, they all name their kids, like, Mate, Marco. Like, they're all very stick with the...
I think it's also, for me, it was a question of identity. You have these kids who are half Kenyan, half Lebanese, Syrian. How do they identify? They're Australian kids. Born and bred.
In Australia?
Yeah, mom's Australian.
Yeah.
But she's Lebanese Australian. So I was just like, you know what? It is what it is.
Yeah, interesting. So where'd you grow up?
Kenya. Born and raised. Spent all my life up until I migrated to Australia in 2007.
Okay.
So I've been here now 18 years.
How old were you in 2007?
21.
Okay.
Came to study. So I was one of those educational migrants.
Interesting. And was the plan just to come for study and go back to...
Yeah, the plan was that. I had a scholarship from the Kenyan government to study.
Wow.
Yeah, came in then. But once you finish your law degree, because I did a double degree, law and international studies. But once you finish that, for you to become a lawyer, you must go through accreditation, so the Law Society of South Australia. That was another 6 months to get it to happen. Then once you have that, then you're eligible to apply for permanent residency. So it's like, I'll get some experience, work as a lawyer. I want to go back home. I want to change things. When I say change, I want to bring in this new idea, this different way of how the laws apply. Because Australia and Kenya are similar. They're both Commonwealth.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was going to ask. Because I've got a friend whose partner's a lawyer, and they went over to England. Like, she studied in Australia, and then they went over to England. But they originally wanted to go to New York, but because they weren't part of the Commonwealth, there wasn't much of a transition. So Kenya is part of the Commonwealth, is it?
It is.
Okay.
You still have to do a little bit more study.
Yep.
So once I kind of figured all that out, I was like, I'll get a bit of work experience while I'm waiting for my permanent residency. And I ended up going to Port Augusta. So that's where I started my law career, up in Port Augusta. I did that for 2 years. Port Augusta, I was working for the Aboriginal Legal Rights Movement, ALRM. I did 2 years, and I did Whyalla, Port Augusta, Port Pirie, Kuba Pidi, and the APY lands.
Wow. And what was the last one, sorry?
APY, so the Anangu Piplinjara Yakunjara lands.
Okay.
And that is like you literally leave Port Augusta on Saturday, you drive 5.5 hours, 6 hours to Kuba Pidi, sleep in Kuba, wake up in the morning, 6 a.m., 7 a.m., drive all the way down past the NT border or right close to the NT border and take a left.
Yeah.
That's like 6-8 hours, man. You take a left and then you drive another 6 hours, 4.5 hours, and then you camp out. So you sleep in a creek bed. Well, at least that's what my experience was in 2011. Things might have changed.
Yeah. I mean, so my childhood was spent, my parents were very into camping. So my childhood was spent driving around Australia, sleeping in a tent. So I know what a lot of those places are like. And I still spend a lot of time in Port Augusta, Port Pirie, Whyalla for work. So.
I know this was wild. Like, this was the Aboriginal Legal Rights Movement, ALRM, and Legal Aid, South Australia. So you wouldn't be alone. ALRM would have our field officer with us, Aboriginal field officer. Legal Aid didn't have one at the time. I'm not even sure if they still do the circuit, but you'd literally sleep in a creek bed. And at least in 2011, you'd wake up and there'd be camel footprints, there'd be horse footprints. Like you are in it.
That's so cool.
And then you wake up in the morning, do your French bath. You'd never wear a suit, but it'd still be in casual formal.
Yeah.
So you still have your closed toe shoes, your slacks, and a short sleeve shirt, and then you jump into the community.
Yeah, right.
And you've just come
and so what were you doing?
Lawyer, so criminal law.
Yeah, but what did your day kind of consist of?
Oh man, everything. So you'd start on the list and there'd be 80, 100 people on the list, all with different criminal charges, most minor, driving related offense, driving without license.
Okay, and this was so the government was funding, but this was legal aid, so you were helping.
Yeah, so ALRM is like legal aid, but specializing with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander clients. So you're a crim lawyer up there, and I have stories about that for days. Like it was an eye opener.
Yeah.
So 2 years there, then I went to Sydney.
Yep. That would have been quite a different, bit of a different environment.
It was, so the cases tended to be generally more serious.
Okay.
Because now you're out West Sydney.
Yeah, it's not drink driving, it's...
Drink driving is always on the court list.
Yep.
There's always somebody out there. There shouldn't be, but there's always somebody driving without a license, driving under the influence of alcohol or drugs. That is it.
Well, you might have defended me when I was 20, 21.
But then now you also have the serious offenses.
Yeah.
Drug trafficking, sex assaults. And in Parramatta, I was part of a team that did Parramatta, Mount Druitt, Barwood, St. Mary's, Liverpool. And
I was born in Liverpool.
This is 2012, 2013 now.
Yeah.
And it was honestly, I've been very fortunate, some of my best experiences.
Yeah, so I grew up in Liverpool. Not grew up, I lived there till I was like 4 or 5 years old. Mm. And I went there recently for the first time in 30 years. And I was like, this place is horrible. It's not horrible is a bad word, but it's rough. It's
And when did you go back?
Like last year.
Really?
Yeah.
And I also saw it from a different light, but I came in from like a legal acumen. Like, I was in compared to practicing up in APY lands versus in Sydney. It's a different level.
Yeah.
Offenses are more serious. The team was a lot bigger, but it was a lot more cohesive. Like we had a really good group of really smart lawyers.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that'd be amazing experience, like diving directly into the deep end.
And then, Mount Druitt, for example, was it called Houses? There was a show.
How's yeah.
And we had three of my clients who were in the series.
Oh, really?
And
Well, like they were actors in this.
remember, it was an acting part.
Oh, yeah. Well,
it was
reality.
as as good as reality TV can get. And that was absolutely intense. I miss it with every fiber
Oh, really?
of my being.
What do you miss? The chaos?
Real change. So,
Okay.
like the Aboriginal legal rights in South Australia, in New South Wales, it's Aboriginal Legal Services, or ALS. And ALS's take on law is that they do a lot of change-based advocacy. So they find an issue, and then they fight that all the way to the High Court. Like they literally change the way policing and laws applied. So you identify an issue, and there were already a few misconceptions about how police interact with people. There's all this information out there. But now you are in it and you see it. Because there's this preconceived idea that police are bad and that they target people. There's hundreds and hundreds of police officers in any given state, if not thousands. But then you'd see a pattern, because you'd be in a small office with 11, 12 lawyers, solely and exclusively practicing criminal law. And you're all together, you're all bonded, you're all boys, you talk. And you'd identify 10 or 12 police officers whose names continuously featured.
Oh, wow. So if anybody's going to actually physically see the pattern, it's going to be you.
It's the lawyers. Actually, no, it's the clients who already see it, because first thing you do is that you take instructions from your client.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, yeah, man, that Luke guy, yeah, that Brian police officer, this is what he did. And then that just becomes one story.
Yeah, so that's an anecdote.
You
and
have
then
20 people that week.
Oh, wow.
And they're like, yeah, Luke and Brian, Luke and Brian, Luke and Brian, Luke and Brian. And then there's a pattern. So then now it becomes, as a lawyer, then you get this added responsibility of, okay, I've just seen Luke's name on this statement of fact. How true is it? Because there's thousands of police officers. Why is it that only a few keep appearing? And why is it that you're always hearing the same story?
So what do you do?
He was aggressive. So then you start asking for the evidence. You always ask for the evidence, especially if they're pleading not guilty. But you start now digging deeper and deeper and finding all these patterns. Why is it that there's only 5 police officers who charge people with resist arrest? And continuously, not just like one resist in a year or in 2. What are the de-escalation procedures? Like, what are you guys doing that's different to all the other police officers that only you are getting assaulted? And then you slowly build on it. That was amazing. Then I shifted to Canberra.
Wait, how does that end? So are you working with the police, or are you like...
Crime is tricky. At least my experience with it was tricky, because you're all working towards the same goal. As a lawyer, your primary responsibility is to the court. Then you have the profession, then the client. So I cannot stand before any judicial member and state a fact that is not true. But then at the same time, it is not my job to prove the police's story or the prosecution case. So my client, whether they did it or not, wasn't a question. It was whether the police could prove beyond a reasonable doubt that they did it. So it becomes an evidence issue. So you're saying that Luke O'Brien spilled water on this client. Cool. He said, she said. Where's the CCTV footage? Where's the statement? Where is all the supporting evidence that you need? And that's how you work on it. It's like a puzzle. The police give you a brief, and your job is to look at it, put the pieces together, and where it doesn't fit, question why.
I want to hear more about your upbringing in Kenya.
I've been thinking about this a lot. I had a recent medical scare, and lying in that hospital bed for the first time in my life, I've been very fortunate that I've been of good health. And this happened at a time when I'm at my most healthiest since I came to Australia. And I'm lying in this hospital bed, and I'm like, where did it go wrong? How am I here? And I didn't grow up privileged. Man, I grew up in a suburb called Comarock. It was at the time lower middle income. We didn't have much, but I have no memory of ever missing anything. Single mom as well. There are days when we didn't have food on the table, but we just made it work.
What do you mean you had no memory of never missing anything?
I just had an amazing childhood. I'm not sure if people will agree with this, but I migrated and was a choice I made to stay in Australia because of the opportunities that a first world country, a privileged country like Australia can offer. But something that I miss is the joy that comes from a society. Now, when I grew up, I had like 20 friends, same age. I was talking to my wife about this yesterday. I have no memory of ever being alone. My mom would leave for work at 7:30. 8 o'clock, we would be out in the community. And there'd be 6, 7 of us riding bikes, playing soccer. I was always with somebody, even something as simple as riding a bike. And people were, without much, and my wife will confirm this, without much people in Kenya. And I was back home as recently as 2 years ago. People are happier without much.
So we were talking about the US prior to when we started. There's a concept I've been thinking of lately because I was listening to a podcast and I heard the guy say, without doubt, the US is the best country that's ever existed in the history of the world, okay? And for some reason that didn't sit right with me and I was trying to figure out why. And I think if you're talking from like an economic point of view, then yes. But I think, maybe not, but what I'm saying is, I don't know, I think Western culture is missing something. I think consumerism and materialism, and I'm on my own kind of, I keep saying the word journey, but I'm on my own kind of journey, moving from being obsessed with materialism and consumerism to trying to, grow a deeper connection with my family. I mean, that's something that I didn't really have growing up. And I'm trying to relate that and hearing to like what you were saying. I don't know, I wonder what you think going from somewhere like there to here, like what you think about the connection between kind of Western culture and consumerism and materialism compared to, which sounds like what you were saying, there was a lot more focus on, I guess, connection, relationship, community.
That's right. And that sense of togetherness, I'm not sure. I've been very fortunate where I started a business and the business has done well.
Mm-hmm.
But the more the business grows, I found myself growing farther away from my family. There was a lot more demands, and it didn't matter how much I was getting. I was still missing because there's always more and more and more. So you're always chasing this rabbit.
Moving the goalpost.
Constantly. And it felt like the push-pull is a lot harder now. And that's not to say that we don't have people in emerging countries, as they're called now, who are not successful and doing amazing things, but at the same time, everything else around you is cheaper. So for example, raising a family, 3 kids, husband and wife, I have to have routines and patterns because all that work rests on school pickup, drop off, dinner, lunch, breakfast. Somebody has to do it. In Kenya, you can pay for that type of help, and it's not that expensive.
Gotcha.
Here, you must do it. So the pressures that you have here every day, raising a family, I can tell you this guaranteed, are not the same pressures that somebody has in Kenya.
Interesting.
Now, that's not to say that if, like me, you give somebody where I came from an opportunity to come to Australia that they would say, I don't want to. But because what we chase, what I chased and what people chase is that monetary element, because financial security is really important. But once you have that financial security and you look at everything else, it's gone. I remember growing up and Going to see my grandmother, and she lived far. We didn't have a car, so catch public transport. See, here, if I choose to catch public transport, I'll walk past my car.
Yeah.
Because it's easier. When I grew up, how I grew up was we didn't have a car. So
Yeah.
public transport, you'd catch 3-4 different types of public transport just to get where you're going.
So we'll get into the business side afterwards, but I'm interested. I mean, you were saying about chasing financial security, right? So both you and I have, reasonable sized businesses. What I'm getting at is, I'd say we'd both have enough financial security at this point in our life. I mean, how do you think about the continuous moving of the goalpost? I mean, are you comfortable with this? Like, so I'm coming from this from my own personal issues. Like, I constantly, there's two sides of me. There's one where, okay, Luke, you've got more money than you ever expected. I'm not rich by any means, but I've got a good standard of living. My family can travel. We go overseas regularly. I have a nicer house than I ever thought. But I always fall into this trap of going, I need more. I need to be the guy that builds the biggest business ever, who's absolutely rich. And then the other side of me goes, no, you've actually achieved what you've set out. Enjoy your time with your family. And those two sides of me are constantly fighting. So especially somebody, I suppose, that's come over from Kenya, I wonder how you see that internal battle.
Every day. But again, recently, like as recent as 2 weeks ago, lying in that hospital bed, I realized that this is it, that it doesn't matter how hard I'm chasing. When push comes to shove, it's my wife and my kids.
Yeah.
So now I've made an informed decision, like I'm being purposeful on it, to spend a lot more time with them. But that means I can't give my work, my business, as much love as it needs.
Yeah.
So that whole thing of, because ideally for me, when I used to sit back and think about what I wanted to build a national mental health specialist agency, a safe space for people struggling with psychosocial disabilities. But what does that mean for me and my time?
Can I ask about the driver for that as well, though? Was the driver, to help people? Because you're obviously in a business that the purpose of the business is to help people. Or was it a financial driver, or was it a combination of the two? Because for me, the early days of the business, I'll be 100% honest, it was all financial driver. It was all kind of selfish, materialistic. What were your drivers that you wanted to build that national company?
I accidentally landed into this mental health space. I had a career in law. I prosecuted a case that messed with me, and before I knew it, I now had anxiety and depression. And I was like, whoa, something has to change. So I stopped law and opened BCOGNITIVE to help other lawyers to deal with it. And my point of difference was I wasn't going to provide mental health training to the junior lawyers. I was targeting your middle-level management, because those are the people who influence change. And then before I knew it, I had one person, two people. I was working in the NDIS sector, and I grew and grew.
And you were specifically targeting lawyers?
I was. But then that focus shifted, because then I accidentally fell into the NDIS as a psychosocial recovery coach. Like, I was helping somebody. They were one of the first participants to get a recovery coaching plan, which is under the NDIS. There wasn't many recovery coaches in South Australia at the time. They were like, hey, you sound like you know a little bit about mental health. Sounds like you're a little bit smart. Do you mind helping us navigate that? Before I knew it, then that path started. I don't have a single law firm, a single lawyer on my books.
Okay.
But again, the business shifted. But then once I was in that space, I realized that, the first challenge was I knew all my clients by name. I knew what their challenges were, what their strengths were. But then somebody pointed out that as one person, you can only help a maximum of 22, 25 people before you burn out.
Well, this is the classic scalability. Yeah.
Hire a second person, because now with two, between the two of you, you can do 40 or 50. Then 3, Now we have close to 400 people that we support. But one thing that I really miss, and I sent an email to the team today in the morning, my managers, I was like, hey guys, I want to go back. I want to go back on the tools because I was losing that sense. And because when I was in it, I could identify all these gaps. For example, my virtual reality therapy program. I was like, cool, COVID's happened, everyone's bailed. How can I change this? So I was implementing not just support, but this innovative way of continuous help because I was in it, seeing it.
Okay.
And then the more I pulled back to focus on the management of the business, the less change I could effect because then I wasn't involved in the everyday running of the business. At least in the everyday working with clients.
So what does that look like? Are you back working with clients?
Well, hopefully, if there's enough work. I sent the email today in the morning. I was like, guys, I'm healed. I'm feeling a bit better. I want to go back on the tools. So I want to delegate a bit more of the managerial tasks to the managers. And then let me go back on the tools for 6 months, a year. Let me go back and feel it and get that core sense of purpose that I once had. And then if I come out again, then hopefully different drive, different ideas.
Interesting. Yeah, just going back to what we were speaking about before, I think I've come to the conclusion that the side of me that when I'm sitting on the couch at home and I'm trying to be present with the kid tells me, hey, you know, you're meant to be this entrepreneur, you need to build this business, you know, you haven't come far enough. I think that side of me is tricking me, right? I think I built up that persona when I was, I guess, a late teen, early 20s, because I don't know, I have a challenging relationship with my parents. I was very anxious. There was a bit of bullying in late high school. And I think I built up this persona, you know, I'm not good enough, I'm not loved. And I think a lot of my drive for the business came from if I prove to the world that I'm good enough, right? That I'm this entrepreneur, that I can do an Ironman, that I can do this, that I can do that, then there's no reason to bully me and I'll be loved, right? So I've come to realize that I think I built up that part that's obsessed with success and materialism as a kind of protective coping mechanism, yeah. So, and realizing that's allowed me to, when that pops up, go, okay, no, that's just Luke, that's just status game Luke, who's, you know, he's a teenager who needs love and attention. Thanks for getting me where I am, but you're no longer required, and I'm able to kind of focus back on family time, I guess, because it's something that I really struggled with. Like when my daughter was born, Isla, she's 8 now. When she was born, in the very early stages of the business, and I remember the day after she was born, I went back to work to like a fucking 14-hour day. And, you know, I was very much in the mindset of like, this is what I need to do for my family. I think, but I just look back and I just regret that. You know, I just think like, what? Like, I don't know. I guess I'm living off the fruits of that labor, but
those key moments were missed.
Yeah.
See, my wife was in labor, and you know, if you're in the NDIS space, you do this auditing, and the auditing process is hectic.
You mean external audits to make
Coming
sure
that you're compliant. And I remember sitting with the auditor and saying, hey, my wife is in labor. I'll get a call at any time to go be present for the birth of my son. So literally my wife is in hospital in labor and I'm here working. But in terms of my motivation, I because I grew up not wanting anything. You know, single mom, but she was a power woman. She was a powerhouse. It meant that I had a lot of confidence, and I've always had confidence as a kid, as a teen, as an adult. I don't lack confidence. But I remember the first time, like when I went to high school, I didn't do particularly well until one kid was just like, oh, I'm actually better than you. And then I was like, oh, do you think? Let me show you why I'm better than you. Then I excelled. Then when it came time to choose a career, I didn't want to do anything. But then I grew up in a society where lawyer, engineer, doctor, those were somewhere, that's where we were told we needed to go. I wasn't good at sciences, but I was good at history, I was good in English. So I was like, oh, I'm just going to do law. But then I finished law. And then I realized, actually, I don't really have a passion for law. And there's this pivotal moment where my wife and I, man, this is way back when, 2015, 2014, we had an argument. She works in the public service, and it was an argument between Australia's responsibilities with Timor-Leste and
With
Timor-Leste, the country, and natural gas and petroleum production.
Yep.
And she said, we're arguing. I can argue. And she said something to the effect of, you're arguing about something that you don't know. And I paused. I was like, oh, cool, you're right. So I went and I did a master's in international law. And then I came back to the argument. I was like, now I know. Now I know.
You did a master's to win an argument with your
Win an
wife?
argument with my wife. Now, and that said, I always wanted, because then at the time...
That's the next level of competitiveness.
And pettiness. But there was also the country, Kenya, our leaders had just gone through the ICJ, so the International Criminal Court of Justice. So it's like, oh, then I can match that. Then I can now understand those politics. So then I did a master's. And then when I stopped doing law altogether, and then I ended up in this psychosocial space, I found that my passion, I love helping people. And for my whole career, my whole time, like my whole living period, I've always been a problem solver. I've always been the person that people come to talk to. So I'm really good at listening. So let me jump into a career where I can listen and have the tools. So I started, I did my certificate for in mental health. I'm a mental health first aid trainer. Then I started pursuing a bachelor's in psychology just because that was the next challenge. So for me, my drive isn't monetary. It's more challenge-based. I realized that I'm not good at things. Like I'm not good in science. I'm not good in math. But I'm really good at problem solving.
Yeah.
So if I see a problem, I'm in it. And that's where I get my drive. So the more I can, even if you look at how I run the business, I'm constantly, every day, problem solving.
Yeah.
And I thrive in that space. That's where I win. And that's my point of difference. My drive is the challenge.
God, that's so cool. I mean, I'm just saying that from a point of view where, like, up until the last few years, I feel like my whole life, I was just obsessed with wealth, obsessed with wanting more. And to hear that, you grew up in Kenya and never really wanting for anything.
I always wanted to be comfortable. Don't get me wrong. Like I didn't want to be, my mom asked me for one thing and one thing only. She was like, this is the level, this is the financial security I've been able to provide for you. So the only thing she asked of us was, don't drop that. Mm-hmm. So that's the only thing I live by. Mm-hmm. So I remember buying my first car. I remember buying my first house. Those are key moments. But you see, that was more almost out of a sense of responsibility, not wanting to disappoint my mom.
Wow.
But that wasn't my dream. Even now with people gauge success in, you want to drive the best car. Man, I'm in a Haval and I absolutely love that car. Out of all the cars that I could have purchased, that is the car that I absolutely love, the tech and everything behind it. I'm in it. People want to buy a Tesla. I'm like, are you sure that's the best Tesla? Are you sure that's the best investment? I'm like, have you heard about the BYD?
Yeah.
And then,
God, you're just like the person I want to be, right? I'm the exact opposite. So you've seen my car at the front. It cost me a lot of money. And I loved it for about 5 minutes. And then I went, I've got a big fucking load to pay back. So I wish like in the moment I didn't just get so caught up. And look, I think obviously like I've done a lot of changes in my life, realizing a lot of this over the last few years. But yeah,
I've done a few things wrong, and especially around business. I'm not a particularly good businessman. I make decisions based off my gut. So I'm just like, what does my gut tell me? My gut is usually never wrong. But from an Excel spreadsheet perspective, man, the spreadsheet doesn't care about your gut. It's in and out.
Yeah.
Culture from an organization, that was massive for me. That was probably one of the hardest things I ever had to learn. I had this practice of hiring the best. Because people teach you, or at least what I was taught from a business perspective, is you hire people who are smarter than you.
Yeah.
That was one of the worst pieces of advice I've ever received.
Wow. Why?
Because from a culture, I bring Brian. I tell people I don't have a home personality and I don't have a work personality. What you see on Monday, man, you struggle with me on Monday, I promise you will struggle with me on Sunday. I am who I am and I don't change for anyone.
Yep.
So anyone who struggles with my personality, I'm loud, I'm bright, I'm bubbly, I say it how it is. You struggle with that, you come to my workspace and it is a toxic work environment.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember the first time somebody said that I was a shit manager, I was toxic. That challenged me because I literally built an office space where people could come and be safe and want to be in.
This is a staff member that said you're a shit manager?
Yeah, man. And I can see why, because what they needed, I couldn't provide. They needed somebody to be there with them, almost micromanage, provide step-by-step guidance. That doesn't work for me. I want to work with
I don't think that ever works.
But you see, I want to work with people who are free thinkers.
Yeah,
so I
me
have
too.
a rule in the office.
Yeah.
We do it, and then you ask for forgiveness. The only thing I ask is you just explain your reasoning to me.
Yeah.
And even if there's an issue, I'll back you, and then we can work on it. But I want to empower people to feel confident in making bold, bright decisions. So the person who needs that much level of support, coming to a space where I'm like, you go do you. See the clash?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm the same as far as there's no work Luke and home Luke. I'm the same person. And that's just because, that matters to me more and more as I get older, because I spend 40 to 60 hours at work now, and I don't want, that's a fair chunk of my time, and I don't want that pretending to be someone else. I don't want that to be miserable. So culture is extremely important to me. So how have you made the shift from hiring, for raw talent to hiring for culture? What does that entail?
2 or 3 people in the interview room, and I'm always in the space, especially if it's somebody I'm going to work with. And I show them the real me.
Mm.
And, I'll be in a bright, colorful t-shirt, or business, everything, the walls, the colors, they're bright. And I usually say, what you see today is who you're going to see tomorrow. If I have said anything that rubs you off the wrong way or that you're uncomfortable with, I urge you, if you're successful in this role, not to take it, because you will struggle. And then I've also empowered the managers to be able to make a decision and say, Brian, I know you love that person, but they are not a good fit for us. Because they also know that you have the feel, they're with the team every day, they're connected. So if they say no, I will tell them outright, I'll be like, I disagree with you. I think that was the best candidate. But if you're telling me they're not a good fit, I'll accept that.
Yeah, you need the buy-in.
I accept that.
Yeah.
Because then I need to be able to say as well that I've told that I think that's the best person.
Mm-hmm.
But I also respect you and your judgment and your knowledge of the team to be able to say, okay, they will not be a fit because of XYZ reason. Cool. I had one leave recently in a hail of bullets. And it's only after that person left that I realized that she was one of the most toxic people to be in the space. Only because I don't micromanage, so I don't see it. I just believe that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
But within the team, people had been really, really unhappy. Really unhappy. But nobody also felt empowered enough to be able to come say it to my face.
Yeah. I think it's incredibly important to extract that from people. I think if you've got a bad egg, it just destroys the culture and the passion about it for everybody else around them. And you need procedures to be able to extract that information from people and fix that.
And incredibly, the most incredible thing is that if you ask that person, Brian is the devil. But in all honesty, neither of us are the devil. We're just different personalities, different cultures.
Yeah.
We need different things. And in my space, because it's my space, I should get what I need to be able to thrive. You go do something else, you go do you, where you can then do something that works best for you and find people who are the best fit for your culture. That was one of the hardest lessons to learn, that it's okay for people to leave, especially if I am the problem.
Yes.
Because I want to be friends with everyone. I want to make sure everyone's okay, everyone's happy. I'm like, how's everyone feeling?
It doesn't work as the company gets bigger. No.
But now, there's always one or two people who are just not a good fit for one or two reasons. But so long as the rest of the team are happy, I had the opposite problem post-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I could not keep people out of the office. People actually want to come to the office. They can work flexibly from anywhere they want. We had a staff member recently work from the UK. You work where you're most comfortable.
Yep.
But they want to be in the office because they get along. People get along. People actually want to be in each other's space.
It's interesting what you were saying about, keeping everybody happy and all of that. In probably about 3 or 4 years into the business, I've spoken about this quite a bit, but I started having serious mental health issues, got to the point where I was having panic attacks, and I just couldn't operate. And I've done a lot of reflecting on that time, and I think a lot of it was I only just started managing staff, right? I would have had 3 or 4 staff at the time. And I was just obsessed with keeping everybody happy, right? And I think at some point I realized that you cannot keep everybody happy, and some people just don't work out in certain cultures. And, you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. And it just led to me just absolutely, stressed to the absolute max all of the time.
How long have you been in business for?
8 years.
See, I'm half you.
Yep.
So most.
Oh, really?
Yeah, man. I've only been in it for 4 years.
Okay.
Have I finished? I think this is my 4th year in April.
Okay.
And some of these lessons, business lessons, management lessons, all these lessons that people have knowledge about over years and years, I didn't even come from working in a similar environment, having that background knowledge to be able to implement. I came from a legal background, starting a mental health practice.
I can relate. I didn't come from a business.
Steep learning curve.
Yeah.
Now, we had one person who, literally, they were one of the best in their fields. And by the time she left, she was destroyed. She was, I'm assuming, the same panic attacks and the same feeling of overwhelming that she just didn't cope.
Why? Is that because of the structure of your business? That's
right. Because of me. And I put it back on myself because I believe as leaders, we are the ones who set the tone and the pace and the culture of the organization. Yeah. If your manager is toxic, everyone else feels it. So I'm hoping where she is now, that she's thriving, because when she left, the whole organization was the better off because that negativity left with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that was 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. But we're always learning. And that's my take on this. Every day, I learn something new every day.
So you've got 2 businesses?
Yes.
Can you tell me about them? 3. You're a sucker for punishment.
I am a sucker for punishment. So
tell me about them.
My pride and joy is BCOGNITIVE, mental health practice. When I started BCOGNITIVE, we say it was the good old days of the NDIS. The plans were, and these are the plans that participants have. They were structured in a way where support workers, who are the people who go into people's home to provide the care and support, the hours were a lot. So you do 6 hours a day, 5 hours a day.
What does that mean, mental health support, right? So, I've had my own battles with mental health, but as far as support, I go and see a psychologist. So what is that? What does your company actually, what does you do? What services do you offer?
So we are predominantly NDIS. So when you talk about BCOGNITIVE, your psychosocial disabilities, your mental health, it's mental health counseling. We have your psychosocial recovery coaching, something called the kitchen crew, mental health mentoring and holding. Essentially, it's different services that cater for. So, for example, your mental health counselor will work on those strategies that you'd implement with your psychologist. Your psychosocial recovery coaching, lesser qualifications than a mental health counselor, but still a certificate for in mental health, and they can help implement the strategies that you've been given from a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or a counselor. They see you a lot more regularly. Mm-hmm. Your mental health mentors are literally like a peer buddy, somebody with lived experience with mental health. You're struggling with social anxiety coming out of your home, struggling with just everyday routine. There are people who can come to your home and just help you. Let's leave the house today. Let's go shopping. Let's go watch a movie. Let's go play some lawn bowls. Let's go do something. Have a buddy with you that you resonate with, that you interact with, that can help you do it.
Yeah, so almost like an implementer. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's BCOGNITIVE. Then, so iCommunity, which is the second one, that started because when I started in this space, not many providers, so NDIS has very many different types of services. But in that specific area for your core supports, which are your disability support workers, not many providers wanted to take what we call small amount of hours, so like a 2-hour shift, a 3-hour shift. So it was very difficult to find people who would take that work on. So I started iCommunity to be able to do that. Then virtual reality therapy, it's exactly that. It's via therapy done remotely.
Tell me more about that.
Oh, that is my COVID baby. It's a gift that doesn't give. It's probably one of the most innovative tools out there to help with mental health. It is absolutely brilliant for a range of demographic, from your 14 to about your 45-year-olds. We live in an era where we were all, at one point or another, we've had access to computers. We now have mobile phones that we can play games in. So it's literally environments that have been designed and co-designed by psychiatrists and psychologists to help target different types of mental health issues, whether it's anxieties, whether it's different types of phobias, like it's purpose built for that. The biggest challenge we have is this amazing piece of technology, but people can't quite see how it works because they're used to traditional therapy.
This is very novel, is it?
It is. It's not novel in the sense that it's American based. So it's American military. 40 years ago now, Vietnam.
American military. That sounds scary.
That's how it started, to treat PTSD.
Oh, okay, that's good. Okay, I thought you meant the other way. No. Going into the military, trying to desensitize people.
No, it was to treat post-traumatic
stress
disorders.
That's good. Yeah.
And then over the years, 40 years, it's just different people have have a via therapy program. Over the years, all these experts have taken aspects of it and improved it and changed it to be able to target different things. So in terms of the literacy, the peer journals, the thesis behind it, it is well documented that it helps. Mm-hmm. It's not a one-size-fits-all. We say it's another tool in the toolbox.
Just for everyone listening, can you describe exactly what it is, how it works, I guess, the actual implementation of it?
So we work on the assumption that people know what virtual reality is. Either you know what a MetaQuest headset is, you've gone to a VR gaming room and experienced that. So it's the same concept. The difference is, instead of playing Fortnite on it, the environment that you're looking at is one that's been custom built to trigger certain responses in your brain directed towards certain mental health issues. So, for example, if you have a phobia of spiders, we are able to put the VR headset on. Then you would put the spider, you slowly introduce the spider, because it's exposure therapy. In the corner of the room. Over time, gradually build it so that the spider just moves closer and closer and closer, until, if the person feels comfortable, it's on their arm.
So it's, I'm going to butcher this, but you're triggering that physical response and trying to train the body that it's actually not in the danger that the physical reaction is making you believe it's in.
Yeah, because the whole concept of VR is to trick your mind into believing you're somewhere where you're not. So it sounds really simple when I say it, But if you have a fear of spiders and there's a spider in the corner, it will throw you.
Yeah.
The difference is now with the VR headset, all you need to do is remove it, just lift it off your head, and you're in your safe space. And on and on. So with traditional talk therapy, which is really important, that's why we say VR is another tool in the toolbox. With traditional talk therapy, you will talk about it, and your therapist will ask you to think about it and imagine that it's there. We now take that imagine into actually it is there. It's not true. It's your mind thinking it's there because the VR headset shows you it's there, but it's not actually there. Even when it's on your arm and you panic, all you need to do is remove the headset and it's no longer there. We have another one that helps with public speaking. And that's right. And it puts you in a podium and the podium is empty. And you can do your speech. And then when you're ready, we introduce one person, 2 people, 100 people.
God,
Then
that's
depending
interesting.
on how you're going, we can then have the crowd clap. We can have somebody in the crowd who starts to boo.
Wow.
We can have somebody.
I'm uncomfortable thinking about this.
But imagine, if, we say imagine, but this is reality. You can do it now where you have this and you can practice it from home. So we are a national provider for that. But you can do it once a day, once a week, once a month, twice a day, 3 times a day, and practice it.
Yeah. Well, so public speaking has been something that I'm trying to get better and better at. This podcast is part of the attempt at that. But I started with Toastmasters, and I remember when I first started, I could barely speak. And then you do that a bunch of times and you get better. And then you just to put your hand up to hosting events. But I can see the value in being able to, the reality is you can't just come home and do public speaking every day. So I can see the value in having a mechanism to be able to trigger that, on a daily basis.
So imagine if you combine VR therapy with Toastmasters.
Yeah.
So you're going for your first Toastmaster. And before that, 2 weeks, 3 weeks before that, you practice your speech with the VR headset in front of an empty auditorium. Then you have one person, then 2 people, then 3 people. By the time you go for your first experience at Toastmaster, you've already been able to do it with 10 people in the room. Now, it will be a different environment, but your brain has already, it's like sports. You can be born good at soccer, football, but the more you practice, then you trigger that muscle memory. So if I kick this ball with my right foot at this angle, it'll hit the top right-hand corner of the post. You might miss a few times, but that muscle memory is inbuilt. That's VR. So already your muscle memory has already been strengthened enough to have that one person, 2 people, 3 people. So when you do your first experience, you can fall back on that.
So I'm interested in how the actual business operates. Is this business currently generating revenue?
No.
Okay.
Well, our biggest challenge the first 2 years was education. Teaching people what it is about.
Yeah, but prior, I've spoken to you about this before, but I'd never heard of it prior to speaking with you about it, and I can definitely see the value. So what's the business model?
Well, that's what we're currently working on. We've had to shift it a few times, and the most recent one now is it's telehealth based, trying to make it a lot more accessible, spreading it around Australia. The biggest deterrent is the cost of the actual VR headset.
So it's a program that would already connect. Let's say if somebody's got a Meta or whatever they're called,
Yes.
Oculus or whatever, did you sell the program?
So we don't sell the
Yep.
program. Because it's therapy. So with any therapy interventions, you must have a therapist at the back of the screen.
Okay.
So there is a therapist who's guiding you through it. Mm-hmm. And because of those trauma responses, the spider being at the corner of the room might trigger a severe anxiety reaction. So you need somebody there to be able to help you work through that.
And the client needs to already have the hardware prior to you engaging.
That's
the problem is that the hardware is potentially not really out there at the moment.
That's right. And now what we have now is that you can lease the headset.
Okay.
because a Meta headset is now about what, $499, $500.
Yeah.
So you can lease it, you pay for X number of sessions. Once you're done with it, you return it.
Interesting. Okay.
See, and that one is new. And also the different types of software. So the more we use it, the more we get feedback. So we do have clients. There are people who are using it.
Oh, you do currently have clients?
Yeah, we do have clients. But when you ask about, it's revenue generating in that it's staying alive, but it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. For what it is, it's still not creating enough traction. So that's my project. It's my baby.
Yeah. Last time I spoke to you, you also told me about some de-radicalisation stuff you're working on. Are you happy to talk about that?
Yes. This is and this is probably my point of difference, where I'm always listening. I'm always hearing about what people need. And I heard about this story of a young Aboriginal teen who had a swastika sticker in his room. Now just take a second and think about that. And think about what that symbol represents. And then you have this kid who has it. So then it became a question of, okay, well, how can we target that? And it's not about going and telling them it's wrong.
I mean, how does that happen? I mean, is he targeted by a...
At schools, in prison, in a custodial setting, it's all about finding connection, finding tribes. We are always looking for family. We are looking for people who understand us. There's all this content on social media now. So if you don't have the full picture, this looks like it's, this sounds so good. Like, these guys are so cool. They're talking about all these things that affect me, but you just don't know the history behind it. What the foundation is of that.
That's so interesting how you put it. I mean, I can relate to that, right? So I spoke about previously how I felt. I don't know. I didn't really have a family unit growing up. Like I did. I had brothers and sisters and parents. Like, we had the family unit, but there was not really any love or connection. My parents are very emotionally detached, and there's no resentment there. They just had a hard childhood themselves. Anyway, in my late teens, early 20s, I think I was desperate for community, and I fell into some fairly bad circles, got heavily involved in drugs. God, how far do I want to go here? A little bit of crime, stuff like that. But like, when you put it that way, you can actually see the path. If somebody's looking for community and that's a place that they can get it, you can see how that would happen.
But look, it doesn't stop there. What about the trauma that you carried during that time? We spoke about bullying in high school.
Yeah.
Nothing ever happens in isolation. You didn't just one day wake up and decide, you know what? No, I'm just going to do this.
Yeah.
There's always something that we've gone through, experienced, that trauma that becomes the catalyst for the drugs, for the alcohol. So now, even with this radicalization, anti-radicalization program that we have, we're not just looking at it as a swastika thing. Let's give you some education. It's what kind of therapeutical interventions do you need? Let's talk about some of that trauma. While doing that, let's give you a little bit of education around what that symbol actually represents, what it speaks to, and how it doesn't align with who you are, and that, more importantly, that group will never accept you.
Yeah.
You do not have blonde blue eyes.
You're being used.
Literally. But it starts with the trauma identification.
So how does that fit into your business? So that's something that...
Yeah, it's a mentoring program that we have. We find...
Is that through BCOGNITIVE?
Through BCOGNITIVE. We find somebody who associates or somebody who is within the same age group, somebody that they can relate to. That person has the tools, the skills, and they start. And it's a tailored program for each and every individual. And it's working. Education, therapy. I grew up in a culture where men were men. There's this word that my grandmother used a fair bit, and it was "omererie," which is like man up. And essentially what she was saying is, men don't show emotions. Men do man things. Men do manly things. But in those moments where I was vulnerable, now I know what I needed at that time. It wasn't that. It would have been for somebody to ask, talk to me about how you're feeling. So my 5-year-old, Raphael, I was talking to him yesterday, And we were talking about this feeling in his stomach that he gets, or that he got before he did his presentation in class. And he's fortunate enough to have a dad who understands what that is. So I'm not going to give him some complex explanations. It's telling him that that's okay. And what that feeling is, what is that? How did it feel like? How did it make you feel like? Then what were you about to do? So I helped him identify that him getting ready for the presentation made him anxious. What does anxious mean? Just a little bit scared.
Yeah.
And how did you overcome it? And building on that.
That's
For
awesome.
me, my training was, man up.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why we've created and we have a generation of men.
Stop being a pussy. Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
And
I
then you're
definitely
like,
resonate with that.
What happened to that? Like, what happened to that guy? Well,
So
you told him to stop being a pussy, so now he ain't a pussy anymore.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I had so much deep-seated issues pushed down that that's what initially led me to alcoholism and drug addiction. You know, it's
And you're still on your journey, like you said.
Yeah.
Even being able to sit here, do a podcast and say it out loud. Like, it is part of the healing journey, because the more
100%.
you say it, the less power you take from it. I remember, and this was one of the hardest things that I had to do in business, was being that authentic self, the way I dress, the way I look, how I keep my hair, and everything around it. I wanted to create a persona, but I wasn't happy. So one day I woke up and I was like, you know what? I am who I am. I'll dress how I am. And that is the end of it.
I think that's the lifelong journey. And it goes to what I was speaking about before. You know, there's who I am and, you know, what I am. And then there's obsession with wealth and being successful. So, because that's a persona that I built so other people will love me, you know, whereas I need to realize that in the moment and be like, no, that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be, and try to pull back.
And where are these people when you're lying in your hospital bed?
Yeah.
Cool, they love you. They love you because you have all these things. But when you're sick, if something happens and your business is no longer in existence, then, you know, we live life, or at least I live life scared of making mistakes. And I've had a really tough few years. And I realized that you show me one person who's perfect. Show me one. Now there's this, I think it's a biblical saying, or I don't know if it's biblical or if it's cultural, but people in glass houses don't throw stones.
Yeah.
I had that a few years back, and I was like, you know, that's right, man. It's you without sin. You show me.
Yeah.
And then I met somebody.
So, yeah.
One of the best things I learned last year was this concept of and then. So this person has an issue with me. And that sounds like a them problem.
Yeah.
Or this happened. And then that sounds like a you problem. Don't make it a me problem. You have a problem with me? That's a you problem. I have a problem with you? That's a me problem. And let me handle the things that are in my control. So those two words, and then, I have been saying them religiously this whole year. That's my new philosophy. And then.
Brilliant. There's a couple more things I want to ask you about.
Ask.
One of them is because you're involved in mental health, and if you don't want to talk about it, I'm more than happy to not, because it's obviously a taboo subject. What do you think about psychedelics and mental health? Do you have any link or thoughts regarding those subjects?
So personally, I have a very addictive personality.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't dabble. I don't do things because I can't stop once I start. But we did the BCOGNITIVE Men's Mental Health Gala last year. And during that journey of trying to get people on board, I was opened up to this whole new world of alternative therapies. There's this amazing guy that I met who does salt therapy.
What sort of therapy?
Salt.
Salt.
Yeah, I forget what it's called, but it's around salt. So you sit in this room and the floor is Himalayan salt and you breathe in this. It is brilliant. And this idea, I was open, like my whole world got shifted to, yes, VI is great, amazing. Traditional talk therapy is amazing, great. But there's no one size fits all. See what else is out there. So long as you have some guidance around it, I don't see why not.
Mm-hmm.
So long as it's not illegal, I don't see why not. Experiment, try. My mental health journey, don't know about yours, but with mine, the traditional coping strategies didn't work. So I had to get creative. I now have a monthly recurring appointment with my psychologist. She's brilliant. And my whole team knows I go to see a psychologist. And the joke is, like a car, I just go in for a tune-up. I just go in. And if I'm having a really challenging week, I'll book in an extra session.
Yeah.
Because I've identified that I need it.
Yeah, look, I would relate to that. And as far as, you're saying there's different avenues, I think traditional talk therapy, I'm the same as you. I see one on a regular basis for a tune-up. And that's helped me a lot. But then I think I just continually keep adding other strategies. Good. And it just, I just feel like it continuously just keeps getting better and better.
See, for me, it's Muay Thai. There's something about kicking that bug that I find so therapeutic.
Yeah.
Like I go in for an hour session and I will hit that bug with as much force as I can. By the time I leave that session, I'm sweaty, but more importantly, my mind is clear.
I'm the same with training. It's either running or weights and meditation. Huge one for me.
That's my goal for this year, meditation.
Yeah.
And just finding time to do it.
It's hard because you don't see the initial. It takes a while to see the benefit, right? So to take 10 minutes out of every single day, it's not easy.
See, and for certain people, they'll hear that and be like 10 minutes. But my day, I can go a full day. My day usually starts anywhere between 3 and 4 a.m. Because then I go to the office and I'm the only person there. I can smash out work. But from 7:30 till 2:30 when I go to pick up my kids, there are days when I have back-to-back appointments.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I don't even have a toilet break.
Yeah.
So one after the other.
I'm the same. And then if I'm in the office, I get ripped in every direction. Mm-hmm. So like now I'll spend at least 1, maybe 2 days here.
Smashing out work.
Yeah, it's the only way I can get stuff done.
Part of the reason why I ended up at the ED was I had an appointment with my GP. I cancelled 3 appointments over 6 weeks because I was too busy to go to my doctors.
Yeah, look, I mean, that sounds like me pre-panic attacks. That's scary.
3 appointments.
Yeah.
So by the time I went in and I got that referral for a surgeon, 3 days later I was in the ED.
Yeah, look, so in the early, I guess 5 years of the business, my hours fluctuated from like 80 to 100 hours, right? And I got to the point where I was like, I'm fucking miserable. Mm-hmm. Like I'm not happy. Like the business was started so I could provide a life for my family. This is what it goes to before. I provided that life. What am I still doing here? And it goes back to that status game Luke, who's obsessed with how everybody sees him. And it's just a constant fight in my head between those two versions of myself.
I started BCOGNITIVE because I wanted a work-life balance. Like when I was selling it to my wife, I was like, you know what? I'll start working, I'll be able to plan my day. So I'll drop off the kids at 8:30.
Yeah.
And then I'll see my first client at 9. I'll finish by 1 o'clock,
Yeah.
2 o'clock. And the number of times I call, I'm like, man, my meeting's run late. Are you free to go pick up the kids?
Yeah.
It's become this running joke. She sees my phone call between 1 and 2 o'clock, and she's like, you need me to pick up the kids today, don't you? Because I'm just like, oh, something happened, and oof, there we go. But now I'm starting, like when I go to the office, like today I was in the office at 4. No, 3:45. But I finished at 6. Drove home, got the kids ready, got myself ready. Off to school they went, and I got into the office. And that's become now the routine. pick them up at 3:00 home. At least now I've been able to, people know, do not call me between 2:30 and 6 because that's unless it's an emergency.
Yeah.
Because then once I go to sleep at 6, call me. 6:30, I'm free. We've already had dinner, we've already done a song, a book, and we're getting ready for bed. That's okay.
Okay. Finally, I want to learn something interesting about Kenya. Either about your childhood or Kenyan culture.
You should definitely visit Kenya, especially on this journey that you're on. I took my family for the first time, like my wife and 3 kids. My wife had been, and the kids loved it. One is a cultural immersion, but the second one was Kenya has one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, the wildebeest migration. And it's this massive migration of wildebeest. Like I think it's in the hundreds of thousands that move from Kenya towards Tanzania during the rainy season in search of greener pastures. It doesn't sound like much, but it literally shifts a whole ecosystem from one country to another. And witnessing it, I remember my son seeing a lion for the first time in real life. So when you go to Kenya and like other countries, you drive through these game reserves. Not parks, but a game reserve. And it's a reserve because there's no natural fence. There's no human-made fences. They're all natural. So when there's a lion there...
What's a natural fence?
Like there's not like a man-made fence. Some like tours, some of these wildlife reserves, they fence it to keep the animals in.
Yep.
But for the migration, you can't fence it because they take a natural path. So when you see the lion look, you're in a car. You are the one who's in a cage.
Yeah.
But the animal is where it's supposed to be. It's just chilling. It's in its natural environment. It's not... Think about the zoo here. You go in and all the animals are in a cage.
Yeah.
They're in an enclosure.
Any safety concerns?
100%.
So, but my wife, Jess...
But you're in a van.
Yeah.
So if you get out, man, you're in the lion's home.
Yeah.
That's a you problem.
Yeah.
But so long as you stay in there, and we did that for 4 days, and
What time of year is this?
It's September, October. So we went in December, so we missed the wildebeest migration, but we saw the end of it. And we see this elephants. So interesting fact about elephants. One of the few mammals outside of humans that have a midwife. The larger herds have a midwife in the group.
Really?
And we are driving and you see, and the African elephants are the largest elephants. And now we are in their home, all right? This is not a zoo. This is a reserve. This is a wildlife park. And there's an elephant there, and there's, what we assume, or at least the tour guide told us, was the grandmother elephant, the mother, and the baby. And the baby starts charging at our car with the ears flipping. And next minute, the grandmother turns around and it starts charging at the car. Now, obviously, you keep a safe distance. And these tour guides, this is what they do.
What's the safe distance?
Safe enough to be able to reverse back and head out.
Okay.
But you see, that was also a warning shot.
Yeah.
It was like, what are you doing here? Like, back off.
Get the fuck out of my...
We have a kid here. But, like, being able to experience that, being able to see that type of animal interaction, that the way the ecosystem is supposed to be, it is brilliant. It is amazing. Like, I grew up never being able to afford to go. So the first time I went was after I'd come to Australia.
Wow.
So the first time we went to the Masai Mara was in 2015. I'd never been.
What, sorry?
It's called the Masai Mara.
So what's that?
That's an area.
Okay.
So it's like, going to Kubapidi.
Yep.
It's not that far, but it's...
That's a region, yeah.
It's like Masai Mara, Voi. I'd never been because I could never afford it. But for once I could. So I took her. And then I took the kids. And my sons, 2 of them, because the other one was too little, they still talk about it to today.
Interesting. Yeah, so Jess she wants to go somewhere in Africa. She really wants to do something like that. I think Kenya's the spot.
There's certain countries where they will literally create. So, to avoid any doubt, look, white rhinos are endangered. So they are normally kept enclosed, but that's to keep poachers out. So you'll have white rhinos, thanks to UNICEF, I think it is, who have guards because they're endangered. But everything else, you go in. And these 5-star hotels, like it's not slamming it, just in case, it's people who camp out, separate issue. But you literally go in and it's the same.
My wife won't be camping out, don't worry. She'll go for the 5-star.
And also, just the first thing you will notice, the first aspect is people are, one, hungry. People will just want to do. And the second one is that people are genuinely happy. The third one is what poverty looks like. It makes you appreciate. Just in case, Kenya is one of those countries where there's wealth.
Yeah.
And it's wealth like greater than Australian wealth. The wealthy are super wealthy.
So I've done India before, and it's crazy. In Mumbai, there is a billionaire who owns his own skyscraper.
I've seen it with the helipad.
And then there's a fucking slum.
Shanty, yep.
It's crazy.
So Kenya's not that bad. So the wealthy areas are separate. But next to the wealthy area is like a ghetto.
Okay. So Kenya, there's a reasonable amount of wealthy people.
Oh, there's wealth, like wealth.
Okay.
And as well, the wealth there is compounded because labor is generally cheaper. So here you can be wealthy, but your trades are still expensive.
The same with China, India, a lot of those countries, the labour's cheap, so you end up getting a lot of very focused wealth. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
But if you're going to go anywhere, you go. Kenya is where you go. Plus now you have a connection in Kenya.
I got the hookup.
Literally have the hookup. And again, it's like Bali. If you tell somebody you're going to Bali, they're like, oh, I know a good driver. You tell me you want to go to Kenya, I'm like, I know the best tour company for you. And giving you the same guys, we've used the same guy twice. It's called Peter. Every time we go with Peter. Why? Because we just like Peter. He's chilled, he handles the kids, but at the same time, we were like, oh, we have 3 kids. Do you have car seats? It's like, oh, you don't need car seats. We're like, no, we want car seats. My kid was like a year and a half old.
Yeah, it's like Bali. It's just like, no, just hang him out the window, they'll be fine.
But seeing that, I remember talking to my elders about what poverty looks like, because then you have the guys who ask for money on the side of the streets, and some of them are kids. And for Charlie Sharbel, he had never seen that. So he really, really struggled to understand that. Why is this kid not in school? Is it holidays like us in Australia?
Mm-hmm.
And why are they asking me for money? And he's like, Dad, should I give them money? I'm like, yes, you can. And then explaining why they're in that position and why he is lucky to have been born in a country like Australia, to have parents who hustle for him. Understand that some of the sacrifices that we make not to be there as much as you need us is to try and provide for you.
Brilliant.
Using that experience.
Brilliant. Brian?
I can talk for days. I told you, look. I have stories for
Yeah,
days.
well, look, I mean, I know that you've got another meeting coming up. Otherwise, we could keep going for hours.
Last parting shot, when I talk about innovation and talking about learning what the industry needs, after this, we have this AI and NDIS event. Mm-hmm. And essentially what we're doing is we're trying to, I use it a lot, but then I realized that some of my peers, some of my colleagues were not using it. But they're now teaching the sector, or at least making the teachings available. We have this amazing guy called Jamie Sherrall. He's like an AI expert.
Jamie Sherrall, EU Adelaide?
Yeah, EU
yes,
Adelaide.
okay.
And he's there. Where else would you find somebody with 25 years experience in machine learning?
Is that what his business does?
AI Inject, yeah, man. So then, he was kind enough to give us an opportunity. He's done 4 sessions with us, literally just taking people on. These are the risks. This is how you mitigate the risks. And that's part of why I love EO, because that connection is through EO.
Yeah.
You know what we should do? We should do a podcast up in Hawaii.
Yeah, let's do it.
Somewhere funky.
On top of a mountain. But you've got to climb those illegal Stairway to Heaven with me. Did you see that?
No.
So there's something called it's called the Stairway to Heaven. So in the 80s, it was it was decommissioned in the 80s, or it was built in the 80s. I don't know. I've got to do my research. But basically, it was built to get to a military base on the top of one of the mountains, and it's basically these stairways that climb a ridge of a mountain all the way to the top. And the government didn't want to pay for the maintenance of it, so they shut it down. So it's illegal and it's guarded, but people sneak past the guard, and apparently it's one of the most beautiful hikes you can do in your life.
How big is a hike?
Oh God, I'll send you the info. I looked at it when we first booked.
You booked for the tour? How do you book for
No. When we booked, when I booked flights. Yeah. Maybe I should. I'll release this afterwards, but I'm gonna do it. I think it's like $1,000 US fine if you get busted. But I mean, what's that experience worth? I've asked
not
it.
worth $1,000 American.
Well, I won't get caught. I'm a pretty fast runner, Brian. I don't know. You know, there is a back way that is legal. Maybe I'll do that. But I haven't been able to convince anybody to come with me yet. So,
is it a big hike?
Yeah.
Is it how many Ks?
Oh, it was a while since I've looked.
But it's a fair bit.
It's a big mountain. You're climbing the ridge of a huge mountain. Yeah. I think it's maybe 4 to 6 hours round trip. But the problem is it's vert. Like the stairs are steep.
It'll be a good workout.
Oh yeah.
So we do that on a Sunday.
Oh, we're doing it, are we?
I'm saying if you're going to do it, you do it right before the event, the learning days, so that you can recover and you can walk for the rest of the trip.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I was going to do it probably the first couple of days I'm there. Yeah. And there's another one there as well, 3 Peaks, or it's like a 3-peak hike where it's just a walk up and down 3 mountains. I don't know if you're interested. I'll send you all the info after this, mate.
Done. And then we'll release this episode after, and you can tell people how it went. But you know what? We'll record up there. If we do end up, you'll see another podcast up at...
we'll do a podcast on top.
And that is called Literally. That's how you get busted, because that is evidence. You're literally giving the cops evidence and you did something illegal.
Well, maybe we'll release the footage of us being arrested.
No, I haven't been arrested yet in Australia. I'm not going to get arrested in the US.
Haven't you?
How do you explain that?
In Australia, what have you been arrested in?
Not yet.
In Kenya?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, way back when. Growing up as a teenager anywhere. Just getting up to no good.
Oh, that's a story for next time.
That's definitely a story. We can exchange stories on getting busted.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, easy.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, man.
Cheers, mate.